talk.
Hey, we are live.
Now.
We are talking now. We can talk. We can talk. We can talk live. What is up, everybody? It's the True Bros, not the True Bros Wrestling Show. I think that's another show on YouTube. This is the Two Bros Wrestling Show. Two Bros. There's two of us.
Sorry, Doug. If you tuned in for a different show, I'm afraid you're on the wrong broadcast and probably have prepared as such.
You're assuming I'm prepared.
Hey, if WWE doesn't bother to prepare for Fastlane, why should we?
Why should we, really?
Folks, you are here for the Two Bros Wrestling Show Fastlane edition. We are previewing Fastlane, and we'll let you know about everything that is currently planned. But since they don't have a whole lot yet planned, we're going to talk also about some of the rumored matches, things that we expect to happen, because it is WrestleMania season. And Doug, I don't know if it's the pandemic or what, but does it feel like WrestleMania season to you? It doesn't have that same feel.
It does not. I mean, even the Rumble, which to me is the official kickoff of WrestleMania season, just didn't feel right. There's just something that's not in the air this year when everybody's pointing at the sign. It's just not coming together for me this year. I don't know about you, but
I'm sort of still waiting on last year's WrestleMania. I know this whole year's been a blur, and I know everyone worked hard and there was some memorable moments, but that didn't feel like Mania. So I'm kind of still waiting on the payoff for that one. But regardless, this is the position that we're in with one more stop on the road to WrestleMania, and that is Fastlane, and that is our main event topic for tonight. But before we get into that, Doug.
Oh, hold on. Wait. Opening bell. Oh, there we go.
All right, the opening bell.
Oh, opening bell.
Yeah, so while we're talking WrestleMania, that's a good place to start because a lot of WrestleMania news actually this week, and we'll just hit that off the bat if we could. It's been rumored for a while. We all kind of expected it, but WWE made it official that WrestleMania will have paying fans in attendance. And tickets for the two-night event that's scheduled for April 10th and 11th actually go on sale this Tuesday. And Doug, I know we've had some concerns about, when is the right time, but honestly, other sports are opening up and have been, so it's not like wrestling's getting out in front of anyone else. And I have to be honest, visually and just excitement-wise, that magic that we're talking about that tends to be gone, I think that there might be a bit of that magic they'll be able to catch in a bottle just for the welcome return of a visual that looks to us like a professional wrestling WrestleMania sized event with those fans in the crowd. What do you think?
I have to agree. I've been really hesitant to applaud things opening back up. On some levels, I think it's still too soon. I mean, both of us are fully vaccinated now, and why we were able to actually do a show together in the same room last week because we are both fully vaccinated. But the majority of this country is not. We are fortunate to work in healthcare and be able to get our vaccines earlier. But, by, what is it, early April, or is it in May?
April 10th and 11th.
April 10th and 11th. So, we're still not going to see a majority of people vaccinated. But I imagine, and I'm hoping, knock on wood, that, we are finally over a hump here and are going to start seeing the decline. We still have to be safe about this. But I think events can be done safely with appropriate social distancing and masking. So we'll see.
And for those of you who are only pro wrestling diehards and don't watch the other sports, this year's Super Bowl actually took place at the same venue in Tampa that WrestleMania is using. So there has already been a large, it doesn't get bigger than the Super Bowl. So we've already had one large-scale event take place at this facility.
Can you say that on our show?
With you and get away with it? No. Not a football fan myself, but I mean, there truly is nothing bigger in sports than the Super Bowl, and we heard nothing about that being a super spreader event. So by all accounts, they handled that event well. I'm hopeful that WWE can follow and learn, the event at that facility and the facility itself enough to be able to pull off. Tampa's their hometown anyway. They were preparing for last year's and had contingencies, still trying to push ahead. So I guarantee you that if anyone knows that arena and that stadium and the ins and outs of what it would take to make an event work. I believe WWE will do it, and I honestly think that it might be for the best, and I do think it will. Whether it's the right thing to do public health wise, I think it's going to benefit the show, and I think that will help generate the excitement that you and I have talked of otherwise has been missing.
I agree. I think it will help the show. Hopefully, there's no, like you say, it's not a super spreader event, and I think it will help the show. So.
And WrestleMania related, also this week, WWE announced that the Hall of Fame is going to actually be occurring this year. Last year, last year we had our inductees announced, but they never got inducted because the Hall of Fame was canceled, as was everything else in the world last year. But this year's event is scheduled to take place on April 6th, streaming exclusively on Peacock. And they are going to induct both last year's class that never got their moment and a new class for 2021, which thus far has one person announced, and that was when they announced the Hall of Fame itself this week, and that is Molly Holly, who I think is someone who is deserving of that recognition. WWE, Doug, also announced NXT's plans for Mania Week. As you and I know, that typically we've had that NXT tie-in where they do a takeover the weekend of Mania. But traditionally, Mania is also one night and not two. So this week, or this year, with Mania being 2 nights, NXT announced that they are doing the same. Their event for Mania this year will take place during the same week, earlier in the week, and will be a 2-night event. It's the very first time TakeOver has ever been 2 nights. Night 1 will be on USA on a Wednesday of that week, which is the normal time that NXT is running a show. Then the follow-up, night 2, will air exclusively on Peacock. And then as part of this same night of announcements there on NXT, they also unveiled women's tag team titles and actually did the first switch of those titles on the very first show. They'd given the titles to the Dusty Cup winners, Gonzalez and Kai. By the end of the night, in their first defense, they lost to Ember Moon and Shotzi Blackheart.
Those brand new titles.
Brand new titles. They were quick to move them, but hey, who doesn't love some Ember Moon and Shotzi Blackheart? So I'm kind of cool with it.
Absolutely.
And so, yes, NXT 2 nights, Mania 2 nights. It's shaping up to be a big WrestleMania week. And if you are noticing a common thread in the news I've given to this point, it is Peacock, Peacock, Peacock. They are pushing hard because they are in high gear with the pending switch of the WWE network in the United States to Peacock. A lot more information has come out just over this last week. And the two bros, we got you covered on that. We're dedicating a special show, Doug, because really there's way too much information here for us to be able to talk about this and then go and talk about Fastlane too.
And I know I'm still confused by all this information you've been feeding me about Peacock. And I read the articles and I'm like, so what am I supposed to do? But we will get that worked out for everybody before we hit our show on this.
In fact, we right before Peacock itself debuts their WWE Network programming, we're going to have a show. So we're going to have a special night and time this week, and we'll be back with you tomorrow with the definitive date and time for that pending broadcast as we gather all the facts together. Because much like Doug, it is confusing, and there's at first they said that everyone's just going to just hang tight. If you're a subscriber, we're just going to port you over. That's not going to happen now. There is actually action you need to take. Some of you will be able to access it, some of you won't. So we're going to save you some money, save you some time, give you some tips and tricks of what we think you should do. But for now, I will say the one thing I think everyone should know is that you can begin with Peacock as early as this week is when they're going to start WWE Network programming. Not all of the material that you're used to on WWE Network, but some limited amounts of that content will be available beginning on the 18th of March. So later on this week, just in time for Peacock to have their first pay-per-view live on Peacock, and that is Fastlane that we're talking about in a few minutes. However, Fastlane will also be on the WWE Network because if you want to do as I am doing, I'm going to, since I have an active account that I've already paid for the month, I'm holding on to the WWE Network at least till April. It doesn't shut down officially till April 4th. So the only thing you need to know now is if you want to make the switch, you can do so beginning as early as this week, or if you want to wait, you have at least till April 4th to make the decisions. We'll get back with you and have your back covered on everything else you need to know prior to having to make that decision. Moving away from WWE, Doug, which I'm sure you're always happy about. Not Impact, not AEW all just yet, but we'll start first with Impact. They had their Sacrifice pay-per-view last night. By all accounts, I did not see it, but by all accounts and the reviews I read just to get caught up, it was a very, very well-reviewed show with some many four-ish star matches on the night's card. So probably something I'll try to check out myself as get a little time. But the significant outcomes that I would want to update people on as it affects the larger wrestling world is that Gallows and Anderson surprisingly dropped their tag belts last night. They had been so prominently featured with those belts on AEW. It was a little surprising that they actually lost this match. However, your new tag champs are New Japan's FinJuice, David Finlay, and Juice Robinson. So this may end up playing somehow into this triad working relationship you have between the three companies. The main event certainly is going to play into this, relationship with the three companies, because last night Impact absorbed the TNA World title into the Impact World Championship officially, and they did so by Moose dropping his TNA title to Rich Swann in a unification match. And this now sets up the next Impact pay-per-view, which is Rebellion. And in that pay-per-view, it was announced this past week, Doug, they're doing a title versus title match. Kenny Omega putting his AEW world title on the line against Rich Swann and the Impact World Championship. What do you think of that?
Here's what I think of that, and this is long-term booking, long-term fantasy booking for me, but I see Kenny becoming the belt collector. First he picks up this Impact title, then he turns his eyes east towards Japan. And in the Tokyo Dome, we see the golden the golden elite go at it in the ring in January 2022. At least that's my fantasy booking.
I almost got chills sitting here thinking about that as fantasy booking. I'm like, yes, take my money now on all accounts.
Omega of Ibushi, yes.
Kudos to Impact. I mean, yes, in this scenario, they'll probably lose the world championship off of their show, at least from their guy. But I mean, the way they've elevated themselves into this position to appear as equals, or at least in the same league as these much bigger organizations, it has really been nothing but good for them. I know Rich Swann set up probably to lose. I can't imagine what the booking would be if Rich would win. The match will be fantastic, but Rich Swann is fantastic, and I think that more people are going to see Rich Swann as a result of Kenny Omega having this match with him.
And I really think Rich Swann will be very protected, because we'll see some heel shenanigans play into this, and it won't be a clean win, but Omega will come out with a win. So Swann will be protected. So
good stuff all the way around. I find this working relationship with New Japan, Impact, and AEW to be some of the most exciting things that happen in the wrestling world in some time.
Yes.
AEW Revolution was last weekend. It did record business. It reportedly is the most ordered AEW show ever, and should do close to $7 million is the reported figure. Obviously, it was not without controversy, which is something that if you want to know more about, definitely go back and check our review from last week's show. But my goodness, obviously, in this day and time when the pay-per-view model in some ways has been broken by the WWE network and streaming and things, just to hear a $7 million number, the folks in AEW have to be excited with the outcome, if not entirely all the execution, right?
So I had read that, and I'm going to get the date wrong, so I'm just going to go with decades here, but this was the highest non-WWE revenue pay-per-view since, I'm going to say, the 90s.
99. Yes, I saw
99,
that.
okay, yeah.
Yeah, which is, the pay-per-view industry itself did start to die off a bit in the 2000s, but still, if you're talking about, non-WWE show
Mhm.
doing that kind of number, I can't even imagine if you threw WWE shows in those last couple of years when things were getting really kind of rough. And I can't imagine any of those shows were outdoing this. So
Right.
congratulations all the way around to AEW. I think that's fantastic and shows a healthy
Absolutely.
wrestling industry right now. One
Absolutely.
more AEW news, Doug, for folks wanting to set their alarms and everything to remember to tune in tomorrow night. AEW debuts AEW Dark Elevation, their new YouTube channel show. It's the one that features Paul White, aka the Big Show, on commentary. So want those who want to follow all things AEW to remember that is debuting tomorrow night. And then the last thing I'll mention before we get to our main event topic tonight, Doug, is that Andrade reportedly asked for and was denied his release from WWE this week.
Mhm.
He's not been used since October, not been seen on air or even spoken to. This was pre-draft, so he didn't even get drafted to Raw and or SmackDown. There's no injury. There's no reason why he isn't being used. So naturally, he is not happy. The release of the talented Andrade probably falls into that complicated scenario of a Renee Young / Dean Ambrose or a Zelina / Aleister Black when Aleister wasn't given his or CM Punk AJ Lee. It's just hard when you have one member of a unit and not the other working for WWE and the other publicly unhappy with them. But for those that don't know, Andrade is soon to become the Mr. Charlotte Flair. And very much probably a reason why the WWE and Vince particularly wants to hold on to him. But that man is too talented not to be applying his wares somewhere. Wouldn't you think he'd be a great fit on AEW or Impact or,
anywhere? He would be a great fit anywhere. And I find it interesting because there's so much talent that WWE has. They still have so many toys that they just keep on the shelf. But in Andrade's case, I'm wondering how happy Charlotte is right now because we have this botched and abandoned angle with her and Lacey Evans when Lacey became pregnant. Now Asuka is recovering from a concussion from like a errant foot that when she got kicked in the head by Shayna Baszler and may miss WrestleMania. So there goes Charlotte and Asuka potentially there, and with Charlotte having really maybe nothing to do for WrestleMania unless they cook up some side storyline or just have Asuka surrender the title and do some sort of like title match, like a scramble or something for the not number one contender, but for the actual belt. I don't know.
Between that and the Andrade news coming out this week, I can't imagine that there's a whole lot of WWE love going on in the Flair household at the moment. So it's certainly something we are going to keep our eyes on because I think that losing anyone from the Flair family, even if it is someone marrying into the Flair family, is going to be big news in the world of wrestling if that person shows up somewhere else.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
And Doug, that is the news for this week. And next week, we'll be making news at WWE's Fastlane if you'd like to go to the main event.
Let's go to the main event. Man, this is going to be short.
Well, yes, it is the final stop on this road to WrestleMania, and we are 1 week away. And, folks, right now there are three matches that are official, 3 on the books. So if that doesn't make you worry a little bit about WrestleMania, but like Doug, like you were just saying, what do? You got an Asuka injury. You got things that are,
right.
There's so many moving pieces every year moving into Mania. There's no doubt that some of those are going to shift around at next week's Fastlane. So it is must-watch TV because of that. If you're wanting to be informed and up to date on all the stories going into WrestleMania, this is one of the last big chances that they'll have to reshuffle that deck.
Yep, and the three matches that I'm looking at. I mean, 2 out of the 3 are only going to go one way. They're out of these 3 matches. We'll talk about them here in a minute. But I mean, the booking for them. I mean, it's almost an insult to have this going into WrestleMania because you're not really. Maybe they're going to use this to advance storylines. but I mean, you look at the numbers, not the numbers, but the lineup, and you're like, okay, this person's winning, that team's winning, and this other one, well, it could go either way to push something forward. But
Yeah, they're going to have to probably do a Miz type surprise, like bait and switch of some sort, in order to put any intrigue into the Fastlane pay per view.
right.
Again, we're not saying don't watch it, folks. We're going to watch it. We're going to review it for you right afterwards. It is the last stop to WrestleMania, but right now there doesn't appear to be a lot of juice behind this one. I don't think either, Doug. But if you want, let's maybe talk about
Kevin.
Yeah, oh yeah, he is in New Japan. And probably AEW as a result of their win at some point. But
probably, I want to see some Finn juice on AEW. But we're talking Fastlane right now. You want to jump into this? You want to how you want to hit this? What do you want to hit first here?
Let's talk, since we know we only have 3 matches. Let's talk about a couple of the matches that are predicted that we can expect to see that just aren't official yet.
Okay,
and one of those, Doug, is for the United States Championship. And what we have there is, you have a recently crowned champion in Riddle, and it kind of looked for a while like, you'd have a Riddle Keith Lee kind of thing going on, because they'd set that up between the two of them as friends and such beforehand. But sadly, Doug, they're still not doing anything with Keith Lee. What we have in this one that is predicted by some is that Mustafa Ali, as the frustrated leader now I even forget what the name of the faction is.
This is the one with like T-Sack and Nutbars and like the guys with horrible names, right?
Yes, man, that is awful. That I can't remember that, but I mean, Ali just recently pinned Riddle on Raw, and so that's usually the way they set up these even Steven kind of bookings for someone to get their heat back. But I think that is a match that I would like to see. I don't really like the whole faction deal because they've never seemed like much of a threat. But I think a Riddle, Mustafa Ali, if not given the pre-show match where they don't have much time to do anything, I think that'd be a good contest. But I don't see Riddle losing a title he just won.
No, I don't see that either, and I can't think of their name either. But I'm thinking, this faction lost all credibility as like these wild anarchists who are out to like destroy the system when they signed contracts to participate solely on Raw. Like real anarchist ways.
And there's such talented people, men and women, both in that faction, that are kind of being wasted as a result of it. So if this ends up, I mean, since the storyline going into this is Mustafa throwing a fit every time one of his men or women loses, let me show you how it's done. If this is just kind of the beginning of the end, so these guys can take off the mask and go on, go back to being who they actually are. Get like a Mia Yim back, like as Mia Yim or something. There we go. Thank you.
I Google it. Retribution.
Man, that shows what kind of impression they're making on us, that we both had just the name slip out of our mind, despite the fact they're on TV every week. But the men and women in that group deserve better. So who knows? Maybe this will be the beginning of the end, and them all going their separate ways, which I think would be best for all involved.
I think that would be
Riddle's. I don't know who his Mania opponent looks to be. I can't see where they're going with him just yet, but there's certainly no reason, as popular he is, and as much as Vince McMahon apparently likes him, that they should be shipping that title off. They need to be figuring out right now who Riddle is going to defend that title against at Mania.
I don't know. It's frightening. Every time I hear that Vince McMahon is really hot on somebody, I'm like, all right, well, they're on their way to being shelved for something ridiculous. I mean, Keith Lee, Aleister Black, Ricochet.
I know. Too many wasted.
What else?
Another match. Yes, Drew McIntyre, who is destined to be in the main event at WrestleMania. There is no way that he is not going to be featured on Fastlane. Yet, thus far, he has no announced match. This past week on Raw, he's kind of been biding his time. You can't have him go too far into that feud with Lashley just yet, because you need to stretch that out. So he's kind of been spending some time with his old buddy, across the North Atlantic there, across the Irish. So Sheamus and Drew had a match that was really hard hitting and pretty good this past week on Raw. Ended in a no contest, and so I think that because of that, we're very likely to see those two have a blow off match in this feud of theirs. The WWE brass apparently were really high on the contest too, like the way it looked on Raw. I see no reason why they wouldn't feature McIntyre going into WrestleMania at the last pay per view. So I think this match happens again.
Yeah,
And
I can see that.
I think that you want him with a tailwind behind him going into Mania. So I think that Drew would win this contest.
I can totally see that. And if it does come down to that, he looks strong heading into Mania. I mean, that's some booking 101 right there anyway. So that's really
now with those two matches.
Wow.
Really? I think it is going to be. WWE here lately, well, I'll give them credit where credit is due. They haven't overbooked the last few pay-per-views.
They have been lean.
I would much rather enjoy a focused 2.5 hour show and you and I be on air at 9:30 talking as opposed to like pushing midnight after sitting there for 4 hours with you know what I mean?
Right.
So, hey, this looks like one of those 2.5 hour shows to me on paper anyway. Yeah, first match, Doug, that's actually official and signed. You have the Intercontinental Championship, Big E, defending against Apollo Crews, who Apollo has had a bit of a character shift here lately that I kind of like this whole Nigerian character thing goes. He needed an edge that he'd been lacking. The talent's there. The edge wasn't there.
Absolutely. Talent's there. The edge definitely wasn't. I like this pairing of Apollo and Big E. I like this, this bumping of heads. But and this is the one I was talking about. I think this could go either way. Big E's got this. He's had, I think the face is always in a better position when they're chasing a belt. That's just more compelling story. But you want your champion looking strong going into WrestleMania. So at the end of the day, even though I'm saying it could go either way, I don't see Big E losing a championship this close to Mania.
I hadn't even thought about him losing as much as I've wanted to see Apollo pushed. It's only listening to you here that I'm like, I can see it that way. I can see a Sami Zayn who feels like he's on the outside of this feud looking in. I can see him getting involved and costing Big E the title or something along those lines. But there is just that nagging part of me that's like, yeah, I'm happy that Apollo is getting a little more shine, but I just don't see them going all the way with him just yet. And Big E really is doing well in this solo venture away from New Day, and I think they continue with that. And even though I do hold open the possibility, especially after your explanation, Doug, it makes perfect sense that, yeah, they could go the other way with it. I, like you, don't see them actually pulling the switch on that one.
Yeah, Big E's just such a great personality, and it would be great chasing something. But he's got it. He's not. I don't think this close to Mania he's going to lose it. And they do have those no rematch stipulations, so he'd have to work his way back into something somehow. But yeah, I'm going with Big E going over.
So this next one actually does, Doug, have a little bit of intrigue. I think that a lot of, again, there's only 3 matches, but even if you include the ones that we're predicting, the 2 we're predicting, you have, at least 3/4 of a card where there isn't a whole lot of intrigue. Like you said, going into Mania, where the chess pieces kind of are, or at least we think where they're going to end up. And so I don't see a whole lot changing on this card. This is one where they could put some storyline intrigue in it, and that's with the Women's Tag Team Championship. Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler, who have impressed me as a team, but they have been either champions or around those championships pretty much for most of the last 5-6 months, if not longer, in fact. But they're defending against WrestleMania opponents Bianca Belair and Sasha Banks. Doug, this goes 2 ways. You either have an implosion of the whole respectful, trash talk, friendly kind of, yeah, but I got you kind of rivalry that we've seen thus far. This either blows up on Bianca Belair and Sasha Banks, or we do the standard WWE booking of where the rivals become the tag champs, and now they're WrestleMania opponents and the tag team champions. I can see them doing that and putting the women's championship tag belts on ice until after Mania, figuring it out. But I don't know.
Okay, so you just flip what I did. I guess what I did to you in the first one there with Big E and Apollo, because I thought there was zero intrigue with this. I was thinking WWE continues this ridiculous storyline of where one of them screws up. They one blames the other for losing a championship title there, and then they're going full on Bianca Belair and the Boss going full on the EST and the Boss, blaming this loss on each other, and that continues to fuel what's been going on for, it seems like, weeks now on SmackDown anyway. It's just a logical progression of that storyline. However, you having said that, I've got some fantasy booking going on that they don't actually ice the belts, but they also defend those at WrestleMania too. So that would be very interesting. They have to defend those belts earlier before the title match, which gives somebody a lot of protection if they win, lose, draw, whatever, one or both of them suffer a hefty beatdown and is very injured going into the title match, which then leads to storyline afterwards. Hadn't even thought about that.
Hard subject to change, my friend. As you're sitting there, expounding on that, I'm thinking you just, brought up the fact that Asuka was injured. I bet I wouldn't be a bit surprised if WWE right now is sitting here a week out, not knowing who's going to win this just yet. Might be waiting to see, are we going to need another women's match at Mania? Is Asuka going to be able to defend that belt? And if not, maybe another way to get a women's match on the card is exactly the scenario you described, where we have the EST and the Boss wrestling more than once, or more than one night. Let's remember that too. Yeah. You got 2 nights to defend.
It's 2 nights, yeah. So I mean,
defend the tag belts one night, and then of course whoever is taking them on, that's when the blow up happens, and they drop the belts back to. I just think there needs to be some sort of title change on this show. So I still, after everything we've said, I'm going to contradict myself and say I still think that the money is going to be on the champs retaining. But I also think the money is, I'm going to be wrong on one of my last 2 predictions. I think they're going to either have to pull the trigger on Apollo or pull the trigger on the Frenemies taking the belts in the women's tag, because I think they need to switch one title at least on the show, and one of those 2 are going to be it, even though Booking 101 says champs should retain each of those.
Yeah, I agree. This is one where it's like, it's not going to happen. The Nia Jax and Baszler are going to keep those belts, but I like my booking going into WrestleMania if they do win them.
I like that booking too. I actually, I like that better than anything I can think of that positively could come out of Apollo.
But you're right. Who knew we could milk this much out of 3 matches? Get a full show. But okay, now that we're talking about, I'm still going to go like you and say the champs retain here too. Though I would love to be wrong. Either Big E drops a belt or the tag team female tag champs drop a belt, which will give us some intrigue going into the WrestleMania. But I'm sticking with the champs on both of these. Champions retain.
We are in agreement that they're going to have to throw us a curveball. They're going to have to do a Miz kind of cash in, kind of like, didn't see that coming, just to add that extra element to this pay-per-view, because on paper, all the champs really should retain here. I think we're in agreement. One of these 2 very well may be where they throw that curveball. I think where we're going to be in agreement is on this 3rd one. The one match where it's definitely not going to happen. Sorry, Daniel Bryan, you're one of my all-time faves, but Daniel Bryan is not beating Roman Reigns this close to WrestleMania for the World Championship.
He is not, but he is going to do what he's done so many times before and make Roman Reigns, who is a amazing heel, love Reigns in this head of the table character, but he is going to make Reigns look so great and make him look so strong and just vicious as he heads towards WrestleMania. that is Brian's job here, to shine up Roman Reigns and just hand him to the audience on this beautiful platter and say, look at this nice shiny Roman Reigns you're going to get at WrestleMania.
Daniel is one of my all-time faves, and I do love me some heel Daniel Bryan, where he's very smugly telling you how he's saving the planet and you're not, and the wood belt and all that stuff. He's much better as a heel than he has any right to be.
Yes.
But his natural role, because we know the man, we follow the journey, people know Daniel Bryan is just a pure through and through white meat baby face when he's on that side of the fence. So the sympathy people just love Daniel Bryan. He's hard not to like, and so the beatdown he's getting ready to take to make Roman Reigns look ruthless as a final tune-up into Mania is going to be something I bet we're talking about on our post show next week.
Absolutely,
in admiration of Daniel Bryan. But this is, if there's one match for sure that I say they aren't going to swerve us on, it's this one.
I'm in agreement. I think we're in agreement. Unless, no, I don't know unless.
Unless Okada comes, no.
wrong company, wrong company.
Oh, they're not playing with everyone else's toys.
No,
that forbidden door is still
closed. Play with.
Doug, and that is Fastlane, as we now know it. There is one, I guess, before we switch, now that I think about it, one more thing I'd like to mention about that main event that we did not mention. There will be a special guest referee for that match. Oh. And that match, yes, that guest referee spot is up for grabs on SmackDown this week. And this is all storyline based on, who else we have in the title picture. But, we have Edge, Edge and Jey Uso are going to be fighting to see who gets to be the special guest enforcer, I guess I should say. They're not technically the referee, but somebody's going to be there to either get involved with, causing shenanigans or counteracting shenanigans. But that is one wild card that there is for this match, is who's the special guest enforcer, who's going to be on that outside watching the other guy's back. Is it going to be Edge or is it going to be Jey Uso? So Roman's either going to have his cousin helping him or his WrestleMania opponent making sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah, because even with that, you still have an equalizer there, and I'm saying that you have Edge there being the enforcer. Edge will be the guest enforcer, which will prohibit anybody else, head of the family, head of the table side, the tribe, whatever it is, coming in to cause too much damaging shenanigans. But eventually, Reigns will still go over, and
Reigns will still go over. That's it.
That is it. Let's head to the big finish.
Big finish, Doug. If you're all right, I know sometimes I like to start with the botch of the week, but I kind of like to save that, I think, till last.
Let's do it.
This time around.
Let's do it.
So, performer of the week. My performer of the week, short and sweet, Bobby Lashley. Lashley has been a man who's been kicking around in WWE for a long time now. Went off and then did some legit mixed martial arts fighting. Also got involved, obviously, in Impact, where in many ways he had some of his best years, where he became a world champion there. So it was a long road from professional wrestling, at the top of the food chain in WWE to get back to that top of the food chain. But by all accounts, a good guy behind the scenes, impressive, physical specimen, strong guy, legit look of a world champion. He finally got his moment, and thus far he's, after just a couple of weeks of decimating The Miz, is doing a whole heck of a lot in my mind to make himself look like a main event performer at WrestleMania against Drew McIntyre. So Bobby Lashley has my nod this week as and my admiration for what he's done thus far.
Excellent. So we'll go ahead and go with performer, and I'm going with the Mad King here, because not for any in-ring action that he did, but him sitting around with a glass of whiskey, hanging out with John Moxley in front of his open fire pit and presumably his home. He just explained away what I'm going to go ahead. You're getting 2 for 1 here for me. from what I would call my botch of the week, because overall Revolution was a excellent pay-per-view. It really was excellent, top tier. But that botched final explosion with the barbed wire exploding death match. I mean, there were sparklers that have had more oomph than that. And and that's not to take away from any of the in-ring action that happened. And apparently, there was a third-party contractor who was responsible for that. And allegedly, it was tested and looked fabulous in when they tested it beforehand. But I guess maybe they blew all their pyro early and just had a few sparklers left. Having said that, though, going back to Eddie Kingston, the easiest way to do this would have been. I mean, what else do? You just give Eddie Kingston a microphone and let him talk for a couple of minutes. And then you're like, all right, I'm cool with that. I'm cool with everything now. Eddie talked. And I'm good with it, and then you roll it up into like a little bit of heel action too. But yeah, Eddie's just great, man. And I'm very much looking forward to what happens next with the Mad King.
Eddie on the microphone is gold. I'm going to get to my botch, like I said last, but I'm tempted to just follow up with what you just had. I'm going to quickly say match of the week. I'll give AEW some, all the credit in the world for a good show that we reviewed very positively last week. But before I start damning them with faint praise here in a moment, I will say that match of the week was from that pay-per-view. Shida versus Mizuzami. It was hard-hitting and women's action that I think set the bar for what AEW's women's division could be, and hopefully is a preview of what it will be. That is my match of the week.
So let me save us all some time and trouble. I agree. That was mine too. Take us home with your botch, brother.
Well, I won't go into what you already very well put about the botch of the week. I don't know how it could be anyone's botch of the week. Anything else but this. It has been the talk of the wrestling world, and that is the ending of the Revolution pay-per-view. As we noted at the beginning of our broadcast, this is the most successful pay-per-view in AEW's history and one of the most successful wrestling pay-per-views in quite some time. So the ending should not take away from the fact that the event was a success. They were able to sell the event to people in a way that got those fans to buy into this. Now, whether or not the fans at the end were happy or not, it's unfortunate that this botch happened. But sometimes mistakes happen, and that's what happened. This dud of an explosion was a mistake. It did take away from the hard work of the match that happened before it. And I hate it that despite all the great action of the night, in many ways, it took away from the whole pay-per-view in that, unfortunately, this is what people were talking about. And we're amongst those people that are talking about it. But, in reality, the internet wrestling community, and this is, hey, Dynamite Doug, I know we have him here, but he owns up to the fact that, yes, he's a fanboy. But in general, myself and
come on.
Yeah, we're all marks for this business, and so that therefore we're marked for someone that has provided a high quality product that is legitimate competition for the first time in a long time. That's a reason to get excited. However, I will say that the internet wrestling community, in many ways, has given a pass to AEW in that we just are very effusive with our praise. And it is just a unusual situation that you have a pay-per-view that your fans are booing the finish at the end, and then the social media explodes thereafter with things that were not positive. And that is a test of AEW. All companies are going to have to go through this. This is a maturing process. This is the first real time they've been challenged with something really negative. And how they've handled it this week has been a bit of a mixed bag, to be honest. In the media scrum immediately following the pay-per-view, Tony Khan provided a storyline cover for the, what had just happened, which was okay. But then when pressed on it, he got defensive and then sort of put the blame back on the fans in the, what did people expect they were going to see? It's not like we're really going to blow people up. And, well, that's kind of what you sold. No, we didn't think that was actually going to happen. But, he should have stopped at the storyline attempt at a cover. And then, also wasn't a good look. AEW, as being so fan friendly, has typically not been that concerned when their clips appear online and on social media afterwards. If you're praising AEW, apparently they're okay with you, using their, using clips from their broadcast. However, if you're trying to show the botched ending to the barbed wire death match that did not go so well and looked ridiculous, they weren't as pleased. And there was lots of takedown notices that AEW started issuing. And then, of course, fans started to hollering that the hypocrisy of, well, you're okay if we're praising you, but apparently you don't like it when we criticize you. It really is just a matter of AEW not being used to criticism and having to adjust to the fact that even if you are beloved, there are going to be times when things go wrong and you don't please anyone. And how do you handle that? And again, it was a bit of a mixed bag. I 100% agree with you that Eddie Kingston did yeoman's work trying to salvage this bit of a mess. But I even think with his good talking that he is fantastic as, it is a bit of like mental gymnastics that they did throughout the show, because I was fine with the way they set that as like, okay, yeah, maybe it's a bit of a stretch to, he laid there, as if he was dead, even though it was sparklers, but okay, yes, PTSD. All right. He's such a great talker. I'm buying it.
Right.
By the time the show had ended, you had Don Callis and Kenny Omega further confusing the issue in that either they wished that they would have blown him up and things didn't go as planned, or things went exactly as planned. And even though they're heels and we shouldn't want to see the face blow up, apparently we all wanted to see the face blow up, and they took away from us what we actually wanted to see by not actually having him blow up. So they really were kind of all over the place. I really think the best explanation might have came post Dynamite when Kenny Omega gave an interview this week where he said, I'm really proud of the match. It's really unfortunate what happened afterwards. But, Doug, sometimes the Shockmaster just falls.
Yep. Sometimes he just rolls through with his Stormtrooper helmet and just falls.
I don't care how good you are. I don't care who you are. Sometimes a mistake's going to happen. It's just unfortunate when it happens on such a prominent big stage after such a hyped match. But how you deal with it, you kind of have to own it at this point. They took a long way around to owning it, but I think this is a good learning opportunity for AEW for how to handle these things when they happen in the future. Because guess what? They're going to happen in the future.
They're going to have TV, yeah.
And so how you do it, I'm with you. Just go ahead and shove Eddie Kingston out there. Tell him to wake up. Someone get in the ear of the ref and say, hey, man, don't act dead. That looked awful on TV. Yeah. And just put a microphone in his hand. And by the end of the night, we'll be all like, yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Right. Okay, Eddie said, okay, yeah, I'm on board.
And that's the big finish, Doug.
That is the big finish. We will be coming at you later this week.
Yeah, we got 2 shows this week, folks. We're WrestleMania season, so you got this week a special episode. We'll tell you more about the date and time. Stay tuned for our channel this week when you can tune in for the Peacock WWE Network switchover. Next week on our regular date and time, or our regular date anyway, we'll be live after Fastlane. And then, Doug, immediately after that, we start into our WrestleMania programming, Hall of Fame show, NXT previews, WrestleMania previews. I mean, week after week after week, Mania is going to be here. So get excited, folks. It's a good time between Mania and everything going on with the rest of the wrestling world coming together. It's a good time to be a wrestling fan.
It's a good time to be a wrestling fan. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Have a good night.